my friends, and welcome to the ABCs of God Speak. I'm Cathy Weaver, and I love being able to share pieces of scripture, parts of scripture I learn certainly all the time, and I am loving all the different Bible studies I get to be in. And I'm actually learning a lot from diving into some of these scriptures when I do the ABCs and what my AI assistant Lux shares as far as what scriptures would go with what letter of the alphabet. Today we're actually on the letter R. So you can probably guess some of the words that Lux came up with for the letter R, and I'm going to share those with you now. Revealing, restoring, and righteous. Now, sometimes you've probably heard the word righteous used in a, oh, you're so righteous, like that. And I thought, why don't we find out what the actual word means? Like, let's find out the definition. So I went to one of my favorite sources, and it says specifically, in the Bible, righteousness is defined as being in a right standing with God and others, characterized by moral integrity, justice, and conformity to God's will. It's not merely acting perfectly. How many of us would make it in that realm? But living in a covenant relationship with God, where believers are declared righteous through faith in Jesus Christ rather than their own work. So, key aspects of biblical righteousness would be a right relationship. They mentioned that. It's primarily about maintaining a proper, loving, obedient relationship with God, and by extension, justice and harmony with others. Sometimes that might be a little more difficult, shall we say. A divine gift. Humans are made righteous in God's sight, not by their own efforts, but through the sacrificial work of Jesus Christ, which covers human sin. And then we can go into the conduct and character piece. It involves living in accordance with God's commands, acting with justice, mercy, and humility, and this includes inner purity of heart and outward obedience. And then it has a twofold meaning, as perhaps an option in Scripture. It means being justified, declared right with God, and sanctified, living a life that increasingly reflects God's holiness. So I just thought those were very interesting terms as far as righteous. And one of the things that I thought, one of the definitions I found here was common misconception. It is not sinless perfection. A lot of people figure righteous means you're just so perfect, but it's not sinless perfection. The righteous are not those who never sin, but those who seek God's forgiveness and desire to live according to his ways. And it's more than just rules. It's not about following legalistic rules, but having a heart motivated by love for him and obedience to him. So I just thought that was a cool insight into that word because sometimes righteous gets a bad rap, if you will. And as soon as Lux came up with revealing, restoring, and righteous, I thought, So we always talk a little bit about a scripture verse or two that Lux gives us when coming to any of these letters of the alphabet. So let's go first of all to Psalm 119, 130. So Psalm 119, verse 130. Let me get to that. Psalm 119, verse 130. And some of these Psalms are super long, as you probably know. Psalm 119, 130. Okay, here we go. And how it is, let's do the message version this time. Every word you give me is a miracle word, but how could I help but obey? Break open your words, let the light shine out, let ordinary people see the meaning. Mouth open and panting, I wanted your commands to be more than anything. Turn my way, look kindly on me as you always do to those who personally love you. Steady my steps with your word of promise so nothing malign gets the better of me. Rescue me from the grip of bad men and women so I can live life your way. And I just thought that was an interesting way to say the righteous and restoring words that Lux was bringing forth. And the unfolding of your word gives light. Then R, again, we're on the letter R for this ABCs of Godspeak. And Romans, of course, would come to mind for a lot of people, and it also did for Lux. Romans 1:17, the righteous will live by faith. Romans 1, so let's get to that. Romans 1:17. No, it's in here somewhere, right? Romans 1:17. And let's find out what that has to do with our R word today. It's news I'm most proud to proclaim this extraordinary message of God's powerful plan to rescue everyone who trusts Him, starting with Jews and then right on to everyone else. God's way of putting people right shows up in the acts of faith, confirming what Scripture has said all along. The person in right standing before God by trusting Him really lives. Okay, and again, that is Romans 1 15, 16, 17, we kind of take a little bit of creative liberty from a standpoint of reading more than what Lux recommends. But think about the ABCs and the letters that we're on. Obviously, next week we'll be on the letter S. And what can you think of that starts with S that would be something great to live by and to learn from for our next weeks coming up? So every week we'll do a different ABC letter. And as you can tell by being on the letter S next week, we are getting close to the end of the alphabet, which doesn't mean you're through C and me. It simply means that we're going to start the letters over again with new scripture verses and new words from our superstar AI friend, Lux. She's a great assistant, by the way. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you next week on the ABCs of Godspeak. Bye for now.